and welcome to the MAPS Canada webinar series. My name is Shannon Smedella, and I'm your host for the series. We are extremely excited to have you join us for our 8th episode of our webinar series. We are officially just over the halfway point. Since the beginning of June and continuing through to the end of August, we have had and will have an amazing selection of speakers, luminaries, scientists, doctors, and visionaries lined up just for you. We've gathered some of the best in the field, 6 additional speakers to be exact, to share important information and their take on the psychedelic renaissance. We are in the middle of the psychedelic renaissance, with research projects and decriminalization proposals popping up across North America, and with MDMA on the verge of approval as a treatment for PTSD. Psychedelic therapy is on track to become the next major breakthrough in mental health care. MAPS Canada, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, has supported studies to develop psychedelics into safe and legal medical treatments since its formation in 2008. Currently, MAPS Canada is funding 2 separate studies on MDMA and cognitive processing therapy as a treatment for PTSD. Additionally, plans to fund studies that identify psychedelic treatments for eating disorders and others that involve ibogaine are in the works. To conduct and publish scientific research and education supporting the beneficial use of psychedelic medicines, MAPS Canada relies on public donations and fundraising initiatives. The funds raised from this webinar series will go to fund this research. For more information on MAPS Canada, please see the website at mapscanada.org. So some housekeeping items for today. We will start with our talk from our guest speaker, Zoe Helene, who is joining us today. After that, we will start our question and answer session. Just a note, you can ask a question at the bottom of the screen, and please vote up questions because we will be prioritizing those questions. And also give us a shout out so we can know where you're tuning in from. We have Vancouver, Victoria, Calgary, Mission, we have Boston, Lake of the Woods, Ontario, California, Ottawa, Victoria, Nova Scotia, Burnaby, Santa Cruz, more from Calgary, San Bruno, Charleston, we have Montreal, Rossland, we have New Brunswick, wow, we have more from Vancouver. So great to see everyone tuning in from all over the world here. It's going to be an amazing episode today. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you Zoe Helene. Zoe, MFA, is a cultural activist best known for women's empowerment through sacred plants such as cannabis, ayahuasca, peyote, and psilocybin mushrooms, our co-evolutionary allies through psychedelic feminism, a term she coined and popularized. Zoe founded Cosmic Sister, an environmental feminist collective for progressives who understand that the grossly imbalanced power over patriarchal model will continue to lead humans down a devolutionary path, ending in the destruction of life on Earth as we know it. Cosmic Sister's psychedelic feminism educational advocacy projects promote sacred plant spirit medicines as a way to jumpstart rapid cultural evolution, starting with women. Zoe is a spiritual agnostic with a passion for cultural and biological diversity, global consciousness, and archetypal psychology as the language of the psyche. Her ancestors were proud tribal people who developed deep, sophisticated, pre-Christian, nature-based spiritual traditions, including sacred psychedelic plant medicine traditions, and survived genocide, oppression, and diaspora. Zoe has been featured in Forbes, Bust Magazine, Sensi Magazine, BBC, Vice, Tonic, LA Yoga, Playboy, Outside Magazine, New York Magazine, Boston Magazine, Psychedelic Times, Psychedelics Today, Organic Authority, the Journal for the Study of Radicalism, and peer-reviewed academic journal, and many more. Psychedelics have the power to help us rapidly evolve from a cultural or behavioral perspective so we can be better citizens of Gaia as a species, which starts with hundreds, tens, and then millions and billions of individual revolutions within. Creating a true balance of power across the gender spectrum globally is the only way humans and non-humans will survive. And that is our moral responsibility as Earth's apex predators, to protect and defend the rights of non-humans to live freely in thriving, uncompromised wilderness sanctuaries. Psychedelics can help women access the wilderness of our psyches, in part to identify, explore, and hopefully heal unhealthy roots of human suffering, such as wounds and disempowering social programming related to surviving and thriving within, and rising in resistance of global male dominance. Females carry trauma from violent misogynist actions such as rape, as well as a multitude of compounded wounds from a steady bombardment of systemic sexist messaging. Everyone is harmed by the patriarchal power over model, everyone across the gender spectrum. The more I do this work, she says, the more compassion I feel for males as individuals who identify as anywhere on the gender spectrum, who bear scars from their own screwed up gender socialization, just like women do. Please help me welcome Zoe Helene.
Hi.
Hi, Zoe. Great to have you with us today.
Hi, everyone. This is my first webinar, so I am shy. I'm seeing all your names coming in. Thank you so much. He's saying sound is not good. Is that better? Is that better? Can you hear me?
That sounds great.
Okay. All right. Brittany says sound not good. Well, I'm in my husband's studio because we had some tech problems. So it's an interesting thing being here on his computer. So apologies for that. Closer the better. Okay. It won't move any closer to me. There it is. I'm trying, but
We could just have, if everyone could even just turn up their volume on their computer, that might help a
you're
little bit
really
too.
good, Mike. Apologies, guys. Okay, but please tell me if you can't hear me. I want you to hear me. Okay, so I'll also speak louder. Um, so psychedelic feminism is a little bit difficult to describe quickly because there are quite a few pieces to it. To me, the heart of the matter is actually environment because in the end, just it's funny listening to my own bio being read is quite an experience. And I realized that I was really feeling my own grief coming up for what's happening to the planet. And people say, well, how is that? What does that have to do with feminism? A lot of people understand because they understand ecofeminism, which essentially is that connection. But for everyone who is listening today, I don't really know where you're coming from. I don't know how much you know about psychedelics, how much you know about feminism, how much you know about all of these things combined. So I'm going to go with you're all intelligent and really great, and that's why you're here. Okay, I'm just going to leap in. And before I do that, I wanted to set the space. If we were normally, I would do something in a real, in real life, in some kind of really beautiful space that has in some ways been blessed. Like you can call it a sacred space. And there are many different ways of calling, every culture has a different name for sacred space. My people on my mother's side, not my father's side, but this is my mother's side, say temeno, which means sacred space. And it's often also a space that is in wilderness, but not necessarily. But also teepees are sacred spaces, malokas in the Amazon. If you've been to a Peruvian Amazon ayahuasca retreat, that's a maloka. And so many others, marais in New Zealand for the Maori people. I feel that a sacred space is very important, and I'd like to make this one. So even though it's virtual, we can still bless the space. We can still agree to have particular intentions, including being kind to one another and really ultimately being about hope, because that's what this needs to be about. Without hope, we have nothing but despair, and we're going to all fall apart with despair if we focus on that. So, with that in mind, let's just start. So, first of all, feminism is something that anyone can be. Anyone can be a feminist. Anyone, a male, a female, anyone across the gender spectrum. You do not have to be a female to be a feminist. We welcome anyone who doesn't identify as female. Please, we need you. We're doing this the best we can alone, but we really can't do it alone. We really need you. Why? Because we are the single most oppressed group of human beings on the planet. And this has been true for many thousands of years. So the reason I say that is because there are a lot of subgroups within that that are severely repressed or oppressed matter a lot, because all of the humanitarian causes are important. All human rights matter. Everyone matters. But many of us have been very involved with the Black Lives Matter movement recently. So there's been some really good things coming out of that, which sometimes mirror feminism, sometimes don't. One of the things that does mirror is this perpetuation of the response to Black Lives Matter is all lives matter. Well, yes, of course, all lives matter. It's a similar thing for feminism. Of course, all humans matter. Of course, males matter. Of course, anyone on the gender spectrum matter. This is about females. We're talking about our experience in this culture and how traumatic it is. It is actually abusive, and it's severely so. And it is a steady, constant, omnipresent force that we experience from a very, very young age. If you have daughters, you need to start thinking about this. If you have little daughters, your children will begin to be programmed from a gender perspective very, very young. And they won't even know it at that point. But kids are smarter than we think. I mean, I remember as a kid, I remember people saying things. I remember the first time I learned that males were the ones in charge, even though mom was important and mom made the rules. Not really. The guys were clearly in charge. It was obvious. The presidents were all male. All the important people were male. So when a male told me I was pretty, and obviously that was meant as a compliment, I immediately realized, oh, it's important to be pretty. Okay. That was when I was about 2. So that gives you a perspective of how young this starts for us. It does not stop, it gets worse. And then you grow older. So you have to deal with the other side of that whole beauty myth. This is where I am. I turned 56 this week. So I used to say I'm right in the middle, but I'm not really. I'm kind of moving into elder at this point, which is a very strange thing for me. So with that, so what I wanted to say with that is to just kind of welcome anyone out there who is not female and say thank you for being here, thank you for caring, thank you for listening. We love you, we need you, we want you. We don't. This is not about male versus female. This is not about patriarchy versus matriarchy. This is, we are in relationship with each other. We need each other. And when I say that we are the single largest oppressed human group on the planet, one of the weirdest things about this group, females and sexism, is that we are among each other. We're not, there's no self-segregation. For example, you can't put all females in one place and keep us there. You can't, you can't sort of say you can't come. You need females to reproduce. I mean, there are females everywhere in your life if you're a male. So that's one of the things about it that's unique, I think. I also want to say that all females matter. That means everybody, okay? That means all females, period. So I don't care how you identify in terms of your ethnicity or your tribe or whatever you are. You matter. You matter as much as everyone else. Everyone matters. All women matter. All females matter in this conversation, okay? So I want to put that out there. I also want to say, and this isn't because I think people are defensive, it's because I really want, it's an important part of my message. There's a lot of pain and there's a lot of anger. So people lash out and call out, and there's nothing wrong with calling out, but if we're not in communication, nothing will ever happen. So I want to be really clear about a few things. Patriarchy is male supremacy. Patriarchy is a euphemism for male supremacy. So let's call it what it is. I will say patriarchy in the sense that, it's a father motif, okay? It's the founding fathers here in the United States, the inability to vote in a female leader. I mean, if you're from another country that has a female leader, thank you, okay? We are just about to vote in yet another male, which is really pathetic. I will vote for him because I'm not insane, but I will never be a fan. Okay, he needs to step down and let a woman in that role, because we have never had a female president. Now I believe Canada has, but she lasted for a very short time. Now, I don't know if she was any good or not, and no, somebody should not be in there if they're not really good at the work, at the job, obviously. But it's not okay to never have a female leader. That is a sexist nation, period. Okay, so let's get that straight. The other thing is, males today, like any male listening, it's not your fault. It really isn't. You didn't do this. You didn't make this happen. This has been going on for thousands of years. This is what we all inherited today. And it's what's gotten us to today, which is a really a crisis that we're all facing. It's real. It's not imagined. Bypassing is not healthy. So please don't try to bypass it. If you are paying attention and you're looking and you're reading about the environment, especially wildlife, you will see that it's a desperate situation, and it's only getting worse. This COVID-19 has not, in fact, helped. People think, oh, the first thing you think is, oh, I'm not using any gas right now. That's good. Okay, gas, actually, gas stocks have gone down. Petrol stocks, oil stocks, which is really, that's great. But in the process of this happening, these terrible leaders in the world have taken advantage of it and have been destroying environmental laws that protect wildlife and wilderness spaces, and they have been raging and destroying like you just don't want to even imagine. Not to mention the fact that all of these masks and all of these cleaning supplies, they're all going into the soil and into the water, and more plastic and more plastic and more plastic. So if we have if we've gotten one a little bit with the oil, we haven't really in the end won. It's still bad for the environment, and this is not the way to deal with population, people. So please stay safe and wear that mask. All right, so male, yeah, patriarchy is male supremacy, and males are not patriarchy. Patriarchy is a system. It's a systemic system. And what that means, for those of you who don't understand, is it means it's in everything. It can't be, you can't just kind of take it out. It's in the very fabric of our nations. I know there are people from other countries, but I tend to sort of think about Canada for this one and the United States, which is where I am. But I really do want to acknowledge that I really am a global citizen. I think about that all the time. I don't ever think about it in a different way unless I need to address specific problems in my nation or in my local community. We need to think of the world. We can't think of it in our own little teeny ways anymore. We just can't. We can't afford it. We live on one place and we all share it, and we're we're closing in on 8 billion people, even with COVID-19. It's not making a dent. Okay. And by the way, that is not the way to handle it. Like I said, it is not. It is not the way. We need to be much more rational about dealing with population, and we need to address it realistically. We cannot live on this planet and continue to to breed this way. It's I love babies like everybody else. I love children, but we have to address that issue. Okay. If you're not believing me, I want you to just do something, or even if you are, just when you get off, when this is done, go home and look up the IUCN Red List. Okay, that's what it is. The .org. So it's IUCNREDLIST.org. What they do is they basically categorize and try to keep track of what's going on with wildlife, other than us, that is, because we're wildlife too. We'll get to that. If you go to this, you will see that they categorize it in their own little ways. It's called the Red List categories. All right. You will see all the species they can afford to do. They're a nonprofit, so they can only do what they can do. EX means extinct. That means done. That means over. EW means extinct in the wild. Different. What that means is maybe they're being captive bred somewhere, or maybe they're in zoos. That's a terrible, terrible thing. It's a tragic thing when something is extinct in the wild. So then you have critically endangered. There are, as of printing this, there were over 6,000 species that are critically endangered. What that means is if we don't do something about it soon, they will be extinct in the wild. Coming back from critically endangered is almost impossible. It's possible, but only if we do something about it. This goes on. It goes back up to endangered, EN, then vulnerable, which means we better start looking at this group of animals. Then they have these others called low risk or near threatened or least concern or data deficient, which means they haven't gotten to it because they can't afford it because this isn't seen as a priority. So when they say vulnerable, they also leave wildlife, or rather not vulnerable, the other one, least concern. What they're saying is, oh, you can do anything you like with those species. You can hunt them, you can trap them, you can see them as vermin. You can do whatever you need because it doesn't matter. And that's not true. They all matter. All life matters. This is a diverse globe. It's a Gaia. Gaia is a principle as well as goddess. She's an ancient goddess. She's an indigenous Greek goddess. And she was probably around before that with a different name. We know she was. She basically means the earth, but it's more than that. It's the divine ecosystem of earth as a being in and of itself. And we all are part of that ecosystem. Each of us play a part in that. As human beings, we are the apex predator. Now, if we were in a room with a lion, if we didn't have a gun and the lion was hungry, we would not be the apex predator. However, we are the apex predator in terms of the way we are acting on this planet. And if you don't know what that means you're at the very top of the food chain. And apex predators tend to start developing very strange behaviors that aren't necessarily good. They can be very nasty. We'll use the lion metaphor again. I tend to use that one because it's pretty horrific. The male lions eat their young. So sometimes that happens. Polar bears do it too. What happens when a species gets to that level is they have too much power, and power corrupts. That's where we are today, and that's what we've got going on. Now, how the heck does this relate to feminism and psychedelics? Well, first of all, we go back to the single most oppressed group in the planet, being females. We females have not had our share of the power for maybe forever, maybe thousands of years. Now, yes, this matters. This makes a difference in different subcultures of the world. There have been pockets where there was wonderful gender balance. Most of those places have been overthrown by cultures that did not have a gender balance, and so we arrive at patriarchy. I want to address on this point. A lot of people mention Western. They use the term Western, rather vague. It's a rather vague term. It's pretty big when you think about, another one I hear is Europeans. Well, what do you mean Europeans? There were many different parts of Europe. There still are. There are many, many cultures. And back in the day, they were extremely diverse and interesting. So it's in the same way of sort of lumping all indigenous people of the United States or First Nations in Canada together and just kind of seeing them all the same. It's a bit like that to me when someone says, "Oh, you're European." Well, yes, but in three at least different ways. Totally. My mother's side is completely 100% Greek. My father is like basically Hebrew, Scottish. So those are three distinctly different cultures before Christianity, and therein lies the rub. If you look at what really truly patriarchy is, and in our modern day, and when you talk about Western culture today, what I see are dominator religions, and I see Christianity as the one that mostly comes up when people talk about decolonizing. I think decolonization is incredibly important. I know I do a lot of it myself. I am not even vaguely healed. And you know why? Because even if I heal all these compounded wounds from growing up female in a male dominated culture, I'm going to still continue to be female in a male dominated culture. I'm still going to get wounds. It's not going to be fun from here. I'm 56 years old almost. I'm in the aging category. As a woman ages, she becomes not useful to society in the popular mind. We can very easily become invisible. And, my mind is very sharp right now. I have a lot of energy. I mean, my body's falling apart. I'm definitely feeling the age, but I have information to share. I'm not ready to back off. Sorry, guys. So it's hard to kind of talk to a screen. I feel like I'm talking to myself and monologuing to myself, and I know I'm not. And I see a lot of people here. We need another term for patriarchy. Fatherhood is a concept and not rooted in male supremacy. This is true. This is true. Nobody wants to hurt you for that. Let's stick with male supremacy then, because that's a really nasty, nasty term, but that's really what we're dealing with. And also, I want to say very clearly that I don't believe there should be patriarchy or matriarchy. I don't think that's better. So if it was reversed, if you were all, all the males were oppressed for millennia and the females were in charge, we probably would have become pretty horrible too. I'm not saying all males are horrible, but I'm saying it would not have ended well. We would be in an alternate universe, but chances are it would be bad because it's not right. We shouldn't be male or female dominant. It should be a balance, and that includes anybody who doesn't feel the non-binary people, queer. I like the word queer, but everyone has their own word for that. People anywhere on the gender spectrum should be part of the power structure, period. At the very least, their representation in the population. And we don't even really know what that is because that's still very new. So we're really beginning to look at all of these things. That is a really great part of what's going on right now, reevaluating some of these old-fashioned notions like gender. Gender is a construct. Racism is a construct. However, you still live with this and the pain of this in the culture. In the culture, the way it manifests itself, the trauma is real. The concept is bullshit, excuse my French, and a construct, but the reality of how we experience it is real. Got it? Different idea. Okay, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at some people. All right. I don't want to get distracted because I know I'm going to get to take some questions afterwards. So, all right, let's talk about psychedelics and how they fit into this. So, I discovered psychedelics early on and a lot earlier than I knew, but I never thought I would be doing this. There's no way in hell anybody would have guessed that I'd end up here. I was born in 1964, which was sort of the height of the countercultural revolution, and I was in a culture, a subculture, which was quite bohemian. It was a school of the arts in North Carolina, and that was sort of the prime years, 64 to 74. And all of my dad's students were, 16, 17, 18, early 20s, because it was a high school and a college. And they were performing artists and they were very gifted. So they were from all over the world, and the teachers were from all over the world. And people who did not fit into the standard binary gender structure were out and proud and very beautiful, and my friends and people who are very dear to me who are now gone. Sorry, I was thinking back on those times. So, psychedelics were everywhere. It was the 60s. I did not indulge because I was a kid. It was inappropriate, but I knew it was there, and I knew they were all, experimenting with psychedelics. So I understood that that was going on, and for the most part, it was a very positive experience. However, my own father, who's a wonderful man, still alive, 92 years old, remarkably able to grow and change major opinions. He was brought up in an era where he had some old fashioned notions, but they were modern for his time. Okay. I grew up thinking that psychedelics could potentially really hurt me. And I bought into that. And then I hit my college years, my kind of prime college years were the Reagan years. So the just say no era, the this is your brain on drugs era was my college days. People around me were not really working with psychedelics. It was not in my scene. However, I had an older boyfriend, about 5 years older, because I'd been out of school a while. And I was a little more mature than some of the students I was with who were in my class. And he lived by, off campus. So he was a pothead, wonderful guy, definitely a pothead. So there was a lot of cannabis present. Now, I still had that, don't do that. That's a drug. You don't take a drug, you can become addicted, blah, 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 all of these classic bogus concepts. And so I also was terrified of getting caught because I would lose my scholarship. And that was real to me. I really wanted to study, and there was no other way I could. I had to find my way through school and pay for it myself. So it wasn't until a year into our relationship living together that I finally said, I'm looking at the people around us that are smoking weed and they're really nice. In fact, they're my favorite people. So they're having a party downstairs and I know they're all smoking weed and I'm ready. I'm in a good space. It's a beautiful day. I'd like to try. So he brought out his bong, and his bong, this was a significant pothead. So he could really breathe that in, and I'd seen him do it for a year, all day, every day. And I did the same thing, not knowing that I was a newbie and I might get seriously stoned. I had a full on psychedelic ride. I mean, the real deal. And luckily, it was beautiful. People ask me about my first psychedelic experience. Now, that was back when I was in my early 20s, which is a very different time of life. At that time, I was still working on, sexuality and, how could I get beyond that double standard of being a girl in this sexist world. And I had, without going into the details of it, I couldn't go to the party. I lay back on the bed and I saw visions that looked distinctly like Alex Gray paintings, and they were, the nervous system moving in very beautiful rainbow colors all through my body. And basically, in a nutshell, what it taught me was that I have a great deal more, not control over, but I can influence my physical body with my mind. It was extremely blissful, and it was about freeing my sexuality, so it was healing. But I knew nobody who was involved with, any kind of psychedelic healing or even indigenous kind of groups in a teepee. Nothing. I was out of that loop. And so I knew there was something here. And from that moment on, I started to work with cannabis myself as a plant spirit medicine. Again, I did not call it that. I hid it. I had to hold it inside me. Okay. Legalization is very, very important. It's one of the reasons I'm putting this out there. That plant helped my life. And it was a feminist issue because women were, all right, I'll tell you, it's weird to tell complete strangers, but women are, it's especially in that generation, it was still, orgasms were not talked about. And the fact that it can be a bit of a challenge bringing a woman to orgasm if you don't know what you're doing. If you're a man and you have no experience, then the woman's body is very complicated. So I actually had a great lover. He was a wonderful lover. That wasn't the deal. I wanted to understand, where was the mind part of the orgasm? And the cannabis helped me understand that in a visionary way, not unlike an ayahuasca ceremony. So I'm just sharing because that was really my first psychedelic feminist experience. I just didn't have a name for it, and I didn't know what it was. So years later now, when I'm like 42 years old, I elope with my husband, and we wind up, I'm skipping, okay, we wind up in the Peruvian Amazon at an ayahuasca retreat, and I have another psychedelic feminism vision, which really was part of me founding Cosmic Sister. Cosmic Sister was actually founded because of sexism in the natural products industry. And I learned there quickly that the problem was the women who wanted to share with me their issues would tell me, but they didn't want to be named and they didn't want to come out because the men were in charge, and the men were their clients or sometimes their husbands. And sometimes they were trying to sell to that man. So when you have a power in imbalance in any place, any different sort of subculture, like natural products I'm talking about, that's all the organics, all of the wonderful, these are products for that are alternatives that are supposedly better for the earth and better for your body too. So they're important. It's an important industry, and I became part of it because it was a movement like this one. And I was really disappointed to see that there was plenty of sexism there, although it was a little better than where I had been. And I say that because we have the same problem in psychedelics now. We have a problem where it's very difficult to bring up sexism, especially sexual harassment. And it's difficult because the men are still in charge. Now, a lot of women are coming up. It's better. It's definitely better. And hey, all women don't get along either, and we don't all agree with each other. This is my opinion. It's me only. I'm not speaking for everybody. I want to make that clear. It shouldn't be one voice. It shouldn't be my voice. It shouldn't be anybody's one voice. Everybody's welcome. We want to listen to everybody. Okay. But this is my opinion. From the perspective of Cosmic Sister, I happen to be somebody that a lot of women share very intimate details of their life with, usually the hard and painful parts. And the ones that are in psychedelics, because that's not everybody, okay? The ones that are in the psychedelic field or have gone to a retreat and been sexually harassed or even raped, these women tell me about it. And they say, what can you do? What can you do? I can't do a damn thing but talk about it. I'm not in charge, but I am talking about it. And that's gutsy enough because there will be repercussions. So I'm doing it because I'm 56 almost, and I don't really care anymore what anyone thinks. That's the glory of the 50s. I do really. I mean, I'm not a people pleaser anymore. I got through that little piece of cultural programming, but I do care. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. It's tricky because a lot of the men at the top of the game in psychedelics are really great guys. I'm married to one of them. He's wonderful. He's a wonderful guy. Paul Stamets, he has donated to Cosmic Sister. Thank you, Paul. Others have. Stephen Gray, almost everybody I bring to the table, he will have on the stage at Spirit Plant Medicine. Other people have been like that. Brian with soap, he has been great as well. Pretty much anybody who I talk to about placing female speakers has been very open. So this is not dissing the men. This is something more systemic. When it's systemic, it's behavior you may not even know as a male that you're exhibiting. That is something that is a big complex problem that we can't really address here. So I'm going to skip to the chase again. I'm going to move on from that. I talked about that a bit, and I'm not mincing words because 30 minutes isn't very long. Let's see, what else have I got here? Yes, males are also conditioned and wounded by the patriarchy. We haven't really talked about conditioning and wounds. So I'm going to go back a little bit before I get to that. We talk about reconnecting to nature. We are nature. We are nothing but nature. We are animals. We are an animal species on planet Earth. Okay? I know that's really obvious, but we don't think about it a lot. A lot of people don't. Most people don't get up in the morning and think about it. I think about it all the time. I know perfectly well. I'm an animal. I have a body. I'm a mammal. I'm a human. And sometimes I look at what's going on in the world and I'm kind of embarrassed about being human. Other times I'm really excited about it. I'm really proud to be human. I got to take all the really good stuff that humans have done and I'm like, that was me, even though it wasn't. So we're capable of greatness, but we're also capable of really destroying our own home. And worse than that, we have narcissistic disorder because we constantly are thinking about ourselves. We think we're more important than the other species, and we are not. We think we're more evolved and we're special. And yes, we are special, but they are too. And if you don't know, start looking. So with that in mind, when you start to really look at other species, you begin to see that they have specific behavioral characteristics that tend to be about the species rather than the individual. It's different. Okay. So for instance, we have this really adorable little raccoon family that has shown up recently, a mama and 4 little fluffy babies with masks, and they're absolutely adorable. So we're watching them, and I put out a little bit of healthy food because we want to see them. They are really something. They're just the cutest things you can even imagine. However, they all have their personalities. Each baby has a personality. They look about exactly the same. Some are more shy, some are more, gutsy, and some are just downright mean to their siblings and push them away. They're more aggressive. So I'm watching that. I'm like, oh, I'm disappointed. That's not a good behavior. But then I'm judging the species and there's nothing I can do about it. But I'm just watching and observing, thinking, yep, okay, that's a species thing. That mom is not going to say, oh, baby, don't push your sister away. I don't think. I mean, maybe they do. But we can actually teach our children. We can teach others, not just children. We can teach ourselves. We can grow. That's something we have that is special. We have language. We can talk. We can write. We can read. We have ways of learning. We can evolve culturally, I mean. So, as a species, we have these very specific traits. Some are good, some are maybe not so good. The question with psychedelics, and I think that this is the thing I'd love to put out there for people, is this. If you go into the medicine space, whatever it is for you, whatever medicine you work with, and you begin to explore what it is to be human, what is it about me that is human? And what is it about me that is uniquely me? And what is me, true me, as opposed to what I've been taught? Now, not everything you've been taught is bad. A lot of it is very wonderful. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I have found, at least, that psychedelics can be extremely helpful in finding some of the deeper social programmings and cultural wounds that we have that are really hard to identify in waking conscious life, without the plant medicines helping us. It's a human trait to be able to turn that piece of our brain off. And we have another human trait. We tend to sweep things under the rug. We do. And psychedelics can help us to identify those things and analyze those things in the medicine space in a way that's loving, that's not mean to ourselves, that's kind, that just allows us to say, you know what? Yeah, I could do better with that, or that's not really serving me, or that's not serving my family, or that's not serving my relationship. I could be better. Or that wound, let's say somebody else did it to you, somebody did something, hurt some, you in some way. They too had programming that they were carrying. So we need to be really kind with each other and understand we're all on this path of journeying together, really truly. Like, be kind to each other, people. There's a lot going on. So males, a lot of you out there be like, well, yeah, obviously we're affected, and we're conditioned and wounded by the patriarchy. And a lot of you maybe haven't really thought about it. And I say this because, see, when you're in one of the oppressed groups, which is, there are a lot of subsets of the oppressed groups, not just females, and including some males in those groups. If you're in one of the oppressed groups, or a group that just doesn't get to their fair share of the power, and I don't mean power over, I mean power to influence. Okay. If you're one of those people, then you have begun to think about this because you see it every day and you're probably thinking about it, and you have righteous rage and all of that. If you have specifically white male privilege, which is a real thing, maybe or maybe not, you've started to think about it in your own life. Maybe you have, and thank you if you have, and maybe you haven't, and that's also okay. I'm asking you to please do it. Please ask yourself and look inside yourself when you are working with your medicines, whatever they are. Really go into deep meditation in a loving way, in an open, loving way, and look at your own wounds and demons that you carry as a male in a in the patriarchy. I'm sorry, it really is the best word. Okay, look at that and say, hey, this is a thing that's really bugged me about growing up male. And, for instance, some of them are very classic. I have these wonderful talking circles with guys sometimes, and they'll bring up these wounds and these programming, this programming that doesn't serve them. And they seem almost, I don't want to say cliche, but they seem so classic. That's the word, classic. They seem classic, like classic male programming, like, don't cry, or how vulnerable can I be, afford to be, or, what, I can, have a doll, whatever it is. Okay. Whatever that is, you have programming. Now, the problem is we're in relationship with each other. So we women can work on our own stuff, but as long as we want you around, we want you to work on yourself too, because we're all in this together. We don't want it to just be female. I hate the idea of like that. I love Wonder Woman like everybody else, but I don't like the idea of their island with just women. How horrific. I like males. I love males. And the men in my life are really, really important to me and have been really lovely to me. So I want to see more people anywhere on the gender spectrum looking at specifically these things with the medicines and seeing what they discover. And please share, because I'm very curious to hear everybody's story. I mean, I've got my own, but I listen to a lot of other people, and it's fascinating. I do think this is a root problem. I don't think it's the problem, but it is one of the top five. And it directly, I believe, is associated with where we are in terms of apex predators destroying the planet. And we're not just destroying the planet for us. That's selfish. That's narcissistic. That's like the people in natural products who talk about organics because they want their children to eat organic or they want their bodies to eat organic, but they're not thinking about the 10,000-year trash they're packaging it in, or the other creatures out there in the planet that also matter. It's not all about us. It has to be about all the living beings. Okay? So really, really look at that and look at the fact that until we have a gender balance, we are never going to get anywhere to a point where we can really change that direction we're going. And we've been heading to the cliff for a very long time. I remember my dad talking about that when I was a little girl. We're heading towards a cliff. Now, there's been little bits of change, and there have been a lot of people fighting for it. That red list that I told you about, when it was put in place, 1970, and it didn't happen overnight. So that means the kids in the 60s were working hard to make that happen. I want to bring out Black Lives Matter again because it's so current and it's very, very important. These things are revolutionary. These things do make changes. Some, maybe they're little changes, but they matter. They make a difference. I remember being in grad school, and I'm being as fast as possible with this story. I was majorly sexually harassed for 3 years. It was very public. Everybody knew about it. Nobody did shit about it. And it damaged me. And it definitely moved me into a different career. I did not want to do that anymore. I did not want to be around people like that. But here was the problem. There was nowhere I could go because it wasn't illegal for him to be that way towards me. There were no laws in my favor. Nothing. The people who dared to speak up were shot down by this man who ruled. And I had no, even if I went up to the top of the hill where the admin office was and made a complaint, it wouldn't go anywhere. And if it went anywhere, it would go to his best friend, who was also male and also a sexual harasser. I knew that because my girlfriend was being harassed by him in private. Mine was public, so it was very damaging. But what happened was I did get through. I was determined to get my MFA. I was like, I am not going to let this bastard keep me from getting my degree. I'm getting my degree. That's it, if it kills me. I got my degree. I got out. I'm in my little apartment, and weed was definitely part of my medicine at the time, trying to regain my, get through a trauma. Basically, I was traumatized. I just didn't know it at the time. At that same year, 1990, 1991, right then and there was when Anita Hill trials started. And the Anita Hill trials, you young folks won't even know about, and a lot of people might not. I urge you to look them up. It's relevant today because Joe Biden, the man who's running for president, was the man running those trials. And I urge you to look at videos of him. Okay, again, I'm voting against Trump no matter what. This is relevant, so hold on. The fact is, this woman was sexually harassed, and she had one of these ridiculous, extended, long, very, very public, grueling trials. She's a Black woman, by the way. And she held her ground, and she was beautiful and strong. And all I could see was, oh my God, that's me. Everything she's saying, that's me. I went through that too. And I was glued to the screen. Okay. What happened to me when I'm watching that, it was healing for me to witness another woman speaking her truth, even though the trial was about a man that ended up on the Supreme Court, and he still ended up on the Supreme Court, and he still is on the Supreme Court, this sexual harasser. But what happened that was great through all of that and through her courage and her commitment was the laws were changed. So keep fighting because the laws make a difference. If that bastard had done that to me now, he'd be fired in a second. Everybody would report him and he'd lose his tenureship. He'd just be gone. There was no law to protect me. So all of these things that are coming out of Black Lives Matter and any other fight, anything else, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, that's a serious thing going on right now. We need new laws. We need people fighting for new laws. That's the way our culture works. Law. I'm not a lawyer, but I've learned that lesson and I want to share it with you. Now, how does that have to do with psychedelic feminism? Well, first of all, I was definitely working through that with plant medicines. I just didn't know it at the time, but I definitely was. I had done something that a lot of women in our culture do, which I had begun to split into what they call alters. It sounds terrible. It wasn't schizophrenia. I wasn't split personality syndrome, but our culture likes to pigeonhole women in these types. It's a Hollywood thing. You know, there's a virgin, there's a whore, there's a mother, there's a handmaiden, there's a this, there's a that, there's a, all these different, women archetypes that are very, very simplified. And we can't be all of them, or we can't be some of them. We're very complicated, women. And that is something that a lot of women go through, and they may or may not know that they're doing it. They begin to basically develop different alters, which are different parts of themselves. It is a type of splitting. So without my even knowing it, I was working with cannabis to bring all my alters together, and I'm fully integrated. Everything, I can think about, I can remember what they were, but they're not there anymore. And that was directly working with cannabis. So today, in today's world, we have this opportunity to at least decrim sacred plant medicines. And I want to say that while I was working on my own, I fully believe in community, and I fully believe in trained guides, healers, shaman, whatever you want to call it. Shaman is like a generic term. It's like doctor. It's the term for healer from Siberia, which matters to me. But it is, so it's just a quick route to say it, but every culture has their own name for that person or those people. And those people are important. They're an important part of the program. They understand the ins and outs of the psychedelic experience, especially a group. And they are there for you, and they know more about it than you do. And part of the reason for them is so that you can relax and not have to be split and be thinking about how to handle your journey. If you have somebody who is your guide, you can let go to a very different level, and that's important too. And I think that the community around that, in a sacred space, in whatever it is, whether you're, we take people to the Peruvian Amazon because I really love the Shipibo people. I love their tradition with ayahuasca very much. I think it's brilliant and extraordinary. And I've been bringing people there also because in Peru, ayahuasca is not only legal, it is considered a cultural treasure. Now, that's something to think about. Wouldn't it be nice if our own countries all embraced their sacred plants and their traditions as cultural treasures? Wouldn't that be great? So that people could actually journey without the fear of legalities, or without having to somehow make it a church. I'm agnostic. I don't want to be part of a church. So these legalities are really important. And when you start to look at that, you start to talk about access to medicines. One of the things I do with Cosmic Sister, or did certainly at the beginning, can't do it right now with COVID-19, is bring people to the Amazon where it's legal and where you can have something like a traditional ceremony. Now, obviously traditions are changing and growing and evolving, and I think that that's healthy. But the traditions are, these are the closest that we have to traditional Shipibo ceremonies, and they're very beautiful. So if you go to somewhere like that and you have that experience, and then you come home, you'll have that for the rest of your life. You'll have a different understanding of how valuable the the that the way that that's done is with facilitators and shaman or healers, or onaya, whatever you want to call those people. That group of people is part of the healing. It's not just the ingesting the medicine, it's also the people who are guiding you and helping you be in a safe space and taking care of you if you need help. It's the person on the mat next to you. They're part of your healing. It's the sharing the next day. It's the meeting someone at the center and asking them how it is, how they are, and what they experienced last night. These are all part of the healing. We are communal. Now, we talked about, again, going back to, we are a species. One of the traits of our species is we are social. We're a social species. I think that's great. I think solitary time to heal is also very, very important. And I'm big into that. I'm an extreme introvert. This is very hard for me to do this. I'm actually extreme. Okay. So I'm in solitude a lot. But, or and I should say, And community is essential to especially long-term psychedelic work, in my opinion. I say this because people can get lost and can begin to go on tracks that aren't healthy, whatever they are. Delusion is one that comes up a lot. Delusions of grandeur. Mania, another one. I would say bypassing spiritual by everything is perfect the way it is, and no, it isn't actually. It's not perfect the way it is. We are in trouble. We need to focus on that and do better. I feel like I'm ready to take some questions. I could keep blabbing, but I'm circling around with all these different ideas. I think one thing I wanted to say, yeah, I mean, I don't really want to go into all of the different ways women can be wounded. There are just so many. It's like I may as well do a workshop that lasts 2 weeks to start to begin to go into that. But I will say this: we are bombarded by sexism every single day. It is in if we turn on Netflix or Hulu or Showtime or whatever it is you are, go to the movie, TV, whatever, you're going to see sexist content. It's the same with racism, and you can't get away from it. It's there so what do? Not watch the program, not watch the art or the movie or whatever. So you learn to kind of like push it down and go, yeah, okay, I'm going to acknowledge it, but I'm going to push it down, try to enjoy the piece for what it is. But it isn't actually like that. You can't really push things down. When you push things down, they stick inside you, and they stick inside you until you work on them with psychedelics. We need to work on all of these kinds of important cultural pieces, these things that are incredibly powerful, such as media, such as entertainment, such as the arts. And then there are education systems and academia. Oh my gosh, academia, don't get me started. All of these sort of subsets, certainly industry, capitalism, it's high tech, all of these industries have sexism. Nobody is immune from sexism. It's everywhere. Okay. So I guess being hopeful is work on yourself. Yourself is the only person you can work on, really. Support others' healings and be kind to one another, because we're all learning. If you're a female and you have righteous rage, and I say righteous because we have every reason to be furious. I have plenty of my own. Yes, we've learned to be alchemists. Yes, we can, try to funnel that anger into something more productive, like whatever, art or this. Okay. But it is also important not to be on the attack all the time, because that doesn't actually it doesn't help. I mean, yes, you can say something honestly, but you can also be kind. And it's hard sometimes when you're really, really pissed off, including myself. I can get really pissed off too. But it's hard on the other end to, when you're wanting to change and you know that you need to learn. It's better if you know that someone is willing to teach you and to help you learn, to help kindly point out some of the things you're doing. For instance, you can have a friend who's male who is not a sexist actually, but exhibits does something sexist. Okay, that doesn't mean there's a sexist. It's different. Your actions can be sexist, and you can learn about how and why they were sexist if somebody helps you. And the best person to help you is a female, because a female knows and understands the nuances. And I'm going to go back to Black Lives Matter because I think it's relevant. I cannot possibly know, no matter what I've experienced with racism, and I have experienced racism in my life personally, okay? I cannot know what it is like to be a Black woman, and I'm going to say woman because we're sticking with feminism, in racist culture. I can't know. I can read, I can listen, I can learn, but I cannot know what it is like to day after day after day endure that shit, and how it is to hold that and live with that. Um, and, it's not right. So we feel the same way as females. We have maybe not as much, but we have a lot. And I don't believe it's a good idea to start to try to say one person's pain is more important than another person's pain, which brings me back to males. Males, guys, you guys have some serious pain in there too. You have some serious real trauma from the patriarchal culture. And yes, it does mean fatherhood, and I acknowledge that word is flawed in some ways, but it's the word we've got. So in male supremacy, you two are hurt very badly, and whether you know it or not, you are. And I hope that you'll look at that and say, okay, this privilege that I have has in fact in some ways not benefited me because I haven't looked at certain things. And I want you to look at certain things because I want you too to thrive. It's important to me that you thrive. I care about you too. It's not just about females. I hope I've made that very clear. The environment part, I mean, again, it's very simple to me. The big environment piece is we have to see ourselves as a species on the planet. We can't separate ourselves. This reconnecting with nature thing, yeah, I say it, I use it too. It's language that's popular. We've all been brought up with it, but it's really not true. We are nature now. You can stick yourself in a high rise in the middle of an entire city that's high rise and only concrete and no plants in sight. And maybe there's pigeons and rats, but that's it. And spiders, maybe, or whatever, but you're in a totally urban environment. Guess what? You're still a human and you are still nature. So, that so don't try to pretend you're not. That's foolish. And from that perspective, try to understand and appreciate other nature. No matter who you are, even if you're expert, even if you're a biologist, you still have something to learn. There's still another animal species to look at. And there's us. You know, all of my work and that grad school and all of that I talked about, it was all about human condition. I was a theater major and I was a theatrical for a long time. It was wonderful and exciting, and it was a collaborative art, and I think that's, I chose it because of that. I could have gone into other arts. That's what I chose because I love working with other talents. It's fun. I do want to bring this up. Okay, I still have a little time. Here's an example of how the patriarchy holds us down, how male supremacy holds us down, how the powers that be holds us down, how colonialism holds us down. Divide and conquer is an old idea. It's a tool. You can find them in the old Victorian handbooks on how to conquer a native. Like if you're going to Australia or whatever, and you notice that, oops, there's some people there already, but you want the land for yourself, then there are actually books, you can find them, that help you to overcome those people. I know that in India, for example, the Raj era had shifted by the time the British came. And I don't know my history very well there, but my understanding is this, that the caste system had ended, but only about not for very long. So there were still people who were alive who still had it in their social programming. So when the British came along, they said, hey, this is great. We'll just reestablish the caste system and they'll fight amongst themselves. As long as we fight amongst ourselves, we're weak. It's a classic way of keeping us down. And that's for everybody. That's not just females. But divide and conquer is across generations. It's not just gender. But this one I'm going to focus on females because I want everyone to understand, the males included. I want you to hear this out, okay? One of the big things we face as females is this idea that the generations shouldn't trust each other. Like a young woman shouldn't trust an older woman, and an older woman should be jealous of a younger woman, not just mistrust, but actually like, not help because she's young and fresh and beautiful. That's some bullshit. Okay. We need each other across all generations in every direction. We're stronger that way. We're powerful that way. And that's exactly why they want to keep us apart. And this is very real. And I think it's real in the male world too. I'm starting to ask that about people. So if anyone wants to share that story with me, I'm hearing that in the psychedelic scene, that some young men are feeling like they're having a bit of trouble getting into the older male dominated space. So please feel free to reach out anytime you want. I'm very busy, but I am reachable, and I care. Okay, or just share your story with me. It really helps me to understand better how this is for you. But I wanted to mention that because I think that that's a really big one, and I refuse to be part of that, not trusting or loving or helping young women. And I feel the same way for women who are older than me, because remember, I'm still in the middle. I mean, there are women who are way older than I am and they are helping me. And I am very grateful to those women because they carry a great deal of wisdom. Now, I carry wisdom too, and I'm also very humble, and I have made a great deal of mistakes. Anything I have that's wisdom is mostly because I learned it the hard way. That's what wisdom means, I think, in a lot, most of it. So when let's say this, let's say you're 20 years old, 21, 25, okay? You know more than when you were 14, right? So I'm not saying I'm better than you. I'm and some things you're going to know better than me. I mean, your expertise, for example, you can be an expert by 25. Certainly, I was. Um, the point I'm trying to make is that there's certain things that I know just from being on the planet longer. For instance, how culture changes over time, how slow the progress is in these humanitarian and environmental issues, how people work very, 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 very hard to put protections in place only to see them be taken away again, how you can't give up the fight. You must continue the fight. Don't give up. If you need a break, take a break. If you really feeling down, call a friend, call a fellow love warrior. Say, hey, look, I'm feeling really like I can't do this anymore. You have to. It's a responsibility. It's our responsibility as the apex predators to do this for ourselves and for all the other living creatures. And if somebody out there is going to say, oh, well, that's natural and the earth will die and it will be reborn. No, 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 no. I don't buy into that. And the reason is because I love the creatures on this planet. I love them with a passion, with a very, very, very deep passion. All of them, plants, animals, insects, birds, you name it. Okay, they're all important and they're all interesting and they're all part of the same piece. There is something in the title, I think, even co-evolutionary allies. That's an important concept. I think I'm running out of time, but I'm going to mention that because it makes sense right now. All of those species on the planet, everybody that's part of Gaia is part of the ecosystem. It's very complicated. We don't understand the half of it. We're just beginning to notice a little bit. We're learning that trees talk to each other, and mycelia is like a kind of like communication device in the planet. We're learning, so we don't even know the half of it. Okay, so we can accidentally wipe out one species by wiping out another. That's called co-extinction, and it has happened in New Zealand. I'll bring up New Zealand again. In fact, if you look up co-extinction on Wiki, you'll find the Haast eagle and the moa. Take a look. The moa was this gigantic, basically like an ostrich, but so much bigger you can't even believe it unless you see the bones in the museum, and then you're like, oh, okay, like you just can't believe how big this bird was. It's called giantism, island giantism. Okay, well, the eagle was the same. It makes our little ego in the United States, our bald eagle, like look like a chicken. Okay, that's how much bigger the Haast eagle was. So the Haast eagle, one of the primary food for the Haast eagle was the moa. So when the people ate too much of the moa, because it was good eating, it's like a great big humongous chicken, right? Feed the whole village. They wiped them out, and the Haast eagle died. So it went extinct quickly. So that's co-extinction. So in the same way we have co-extinction, we have co-evolution. And that's where I believe the plants come in, plants and fungi. And I'm not alone in that. And I know that's a concept that people talk about. And I think that it comes back to what I said about the social programming. There's two different things. There's the wounds that you carry, working on your wounds to become a more healed person so that you can function better in your own life. Like if you're dealing with anxiety and stress and you're just a mess, you're not going to be able to help anybody. You need to help yourself first. You need to deal with that. Don't feel bad about it. Something happened to you. You are not a victim. You were victimized. It's okay. Rise above that. You can do it, and ask for help. Don't be scared. Ask for help. But if you can move beyond those major traumas that keep you down and then begin to look at the more subtle programming and conditioning that keeps us down and keeps us a bad species, a destructive species, okay? Those things need to be addressed too, one after another, and that's a lifetime pursuit, right? We're students of life. We're always learning and changing, okay? If you do that, then those are in fact co-evolutionary allies. They are our friends. They're helping us to be better humans. And you can look at it from a spiritual or poetic perspective, or you can look at it as a chemical perspective, as a reductionist scientist, if you like, or somebody who's exploring chemistry because it's an exciting new frontier. You can look at it however you like. It's important to grow in that way and evolve personally and as a species. And if we don't, it's game over. And I think I'll end that. I mean, I have plenty more to say. I can blab forever, as you can notice, but I'd love to take some questions. Hi.
Absolutely. You have a ton of questions, and thank you so much, Zoe, for sharing your passion and wisdom and knowledge with all of us. I've got a whole bunch of notes here and questions for you. So we have about 15 minutes left. So we'll start with a few questions. The first one you already touched on, but there's two parts to the question. The first part was what made you decide to create Cosmic Sister? The second part is what is the ultimate vision of what you hope to do with the organization?
Ah, well, I mean, my favorite part of Cosmic Sister is working with women in the medicine space. That's the truth. I mean, that's the deepest piece. And if I didn't have to do the other part, like help the gender bias in the psychedelic field, I would love to be working more with that. And I also would really love to work with more men. So uh, usually we have a few men in the space with us in the Amazon, and that I think that's been really important. But also, it's also because iquitos can be dangerous for women. If there's just one single man, it's okay, but if there are several men, we're safer. But I think it would be great to be in the medicine space with some men who are really interested in some of the things we talked about and really exploring that along with the women. I think that could be very powerful and interesting. I'd love to do that. Um, so the grant programs allow me to help people get there who can't afford it themselves, or if they can afford it, maybe they wouldn't. I mean, at first it wasn't necessarily only people who couldn't afford it. Now that doesn't even sound right. It's about accessibility. I think part of being female is often a financial thing. So a lot of females find themselves without money, and that's a very deep rooted. It's not all women. It's a deep rooted part of our programming that is complex, and it would take too long to explain it, but it's true. So I found that simply by saying, "Hey, this woman is wonderful. She's already doing good work in the world, but she's suffering from this thing, and it's becoming difficult for her. It's holding her back, and it's a wide range of things. It's sometimes it's something truly terrible, like a rape, or like in one case, a woman whose sister was raped and murdered, and then she was raped, and so she was also dealing with the fact that she was the survivor. I mean, that's like a compound, very serious trauma with PTSD. I had PTSD too, from something that happened to me when I was 18, not a rape. It was a very extreme situation, and it really was full on PTSD. I healed that in the Amazon with ayahuasca. So I think that there are those traumas, and then there are these other ones that are, you can't put your finger on them. You don't know what the trauma was, but you do know what the effect is on your life, like how you are holding, how you are being affected. Like maybe you can't stay in a relationship longer than a year or two, or maybe you feel that your voice is muzzled. Yeah, I get that a lot. A lot of women are suffering from eating disorders. A lot of women, low self-esteem. That's really common. Um, yeah, the feeling of being muzzled, anger, um, sexual violence, lots of sexual violence. The eating disorders go with that, but not necessarily. And the list goes on and on and on and on. So I mean, does that answer the question? No, not really. I think the other matters too. I mean, look, if I had all the money in the world, if Richard Branson or whoever decided Gwyneth Paltrow, hello, um, I like Gwyneth. I don't like the Gwyneth bashers. But if anybody with a ton of money wanted to help, they could do a lot of good with it. It's a little bit of money goes a very long way with Cosmic Sister. It goes. I'm pretty frugal, and the women are so wonderful and creative that they do a lot with this little bit of money. So I would love to not have to worry about that anymore, so that we could do a lot more. we can hire people, more people full time would be great, or full time even as freelancers. That's great too. I would love to just continue to see that grow all over the world. That's another thing. I'd love to have more people from different countries be able to come. It costs more money. I'd love to see Indigenous women be able to come to experience another Indigenous. This is all Shipibo I'm talking about right now, but there are other Indigenous cultures who are doing really wonderful work with plant medicines. I would love to have sort of almost like an Indigenous women exchange, if that makes sense, you know? So somebody who is working with peyote is able to experience ayahuasca with other Indigenous women. I think that could be very powerful and interesting for them. But I mean, all of these things, I have lots of things I'd love to do. There's no grand vision. I do hope that I don't have to do psychedelic feminism anymore by the time I die, because I hope the problem's solved. That would be the ultimate vision.
Mhm.
So we'll end at that.
And if people want to support Cosmic Sister, I believe Caitlin has shared your social media handles in the chat here, and also the link to support and donate. So that's all in the chat.
Thank you, great that way. I'm really shy about asking for money, but you know, the thing is that it's really true. Like right now on Instagram, we are kind of slow to get on Instagram, and we're growing authentically. We don't believe in buying Instagram followers like others do in the space. So we decided we really wanted to attract people who actually wanted to be part of the conversation. And so we're at 6,000, but if every single person put in $20, we'd have a lot. We could do a lot with that money. It won't happen though. That's not going to happen. That's not how it works. People don't just go, "Oh, I'll PayPal. I can afford $20," you know. But it really does matter. I mean, you don't have to be a wealthy person. It doesn't have to be, you know, Dr. Bronner's. It doesn't have to be, you know, Patagonia. I'd love Patagonia to you know, give a substantial donation. You know, these bigger organizations, it would be fantastic to see them really fund, like proper funding. But these small donations, they do help, and we rely on them. I'm not wealthy. If people think I am, you know, I'm wealthy in a different way, not monetarily. I'm wealthy because I have love and I'm happy and I'm healthy and all of that. But I, I'm not, you know, I don't. All the money I made in high tech is with my ex. We won't get there because he could be watching.
Well, you're wealthy in the best way.
I hope so. I mean, I think I think I am. I think that that's an interesting word. You know, we talk a lot about privilege these days because, you know, when I say white male privilege, that doesn't mean, oh, you're a bad person. It just means in the culture that we have, you have a particular privilege just because you don't have to endure some of this other crap that's put on you if you're not a white male. I have privileges that I really value. Like, for instance, I have an education. I'm safe. I have food. I have a home. I live in a country. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that because our country is going downhill fast. But I was going to say that's pretty safe to live in. I have a wonderful husband. I have my parents are fantastic. Those are real privileges. I have talent. I have a brain. I'm mostly able-bodied. Those are privileges. I am very conscious of those privileges, and I appreciate the privilege of being able to, you know, share my work with you all tonight. Seriously, thank you.
And we're absolutely honored to have you here with us today. So we have time for another question. The second one we have here has 5 votes, so we'll go to this one. It says, as you mentioned, societal power structures are often learned and established at a young age. Have you seen any differences in how psychedelics are perceived in matriarchal First Nation tribes and other cultures compared to patriarchal ones? Is there an approach to societal structure that you feel would offer a healthy outlook to plant medicines and psychedelics? This is from Jordan.
Hi, Jordan. Um, well, first of all, I want to go back to I don't believe matriarchy is healthier than patriarchy. So, if there really are matriarchal indigenous cultures that are still around, they're not superpowers. And I say that with great love because my ancestry is, in fact, one of the maybe only, you know, ancient matriarchies we know about. The Minoans and became the Mycenaeans, and they maybe were maybe a matriarchy. And if they weren't a matriarchy, they were definitely much more balanced, and the women were important. And they were medicine women, by the way, working with plant medicines in a big way. It was part of life. It was a beautiful structure, but it wasn't perfect. And then, it got taken over by colonizers, actually. The Hellenic Greeks that we know of were, in fact, colonizers. They might have been nicer, but they were. And the first Greeks were more interesting than the second, and certainly more interesting than, oh, I don't want to really upset my Greek family, but Christianity is not the same as the original Greeks, okay? Um, so I say that because the matriarchs in the Minoan civilization did not really believe in war, so therefore they didn't put a lot of money into defense. And so when maybe what happened, we don't really know. Maybe one of the things that happened is that the first warrior tribe that came along took them over. So I think the answer is, well, part of the question was, do plant medicines help us become that type, right? Or was it more about visualizing a better, more healthy culture that also works with plant medicines? I think it was that. In that case, I mean, I don't want to diss the smaller cultures, but I want to be honest about the fact that we're living on a global stage right now. This is a very big problem, and we can have bubbles. I live in one. It's wonderful. I mean, the reason I have food is because we have CSAs. We have organic farmers around that we can just go and get food from. I mean, we have people who love working the land. Like, that's their passion and their expertise. That's a bubble. I mean, if anything happened to the United States because of COVID-19 or whatever, if we fell apart, the people who are not of my tribe and not of my scene here would come from other places and would take everything we had and maybe even kill us. And that's happened throughout history. So I think the you know in a utopian society, sure, yeah, I mean, yeah, in an ideal future, yeah, sure, we can all aim for that. But at the moment, we are little bubbles all over the world, and that's the thing about social media that's really wonderful. I know there's some really bad shit about social media, but we are able to connect with each other in ways around the world that we never have before. So I think that's part of the answer, towards at least towards looking for these kinds of cultures around the world and supporting one another to grow, and gain power. And again, it's not power over, it's just power to make decisions. If you have somebody that has atomic bombs and tanks and whatnot come at your nice sweet little matriarchal village, or a village that has gender balance, you'll be wiped out. I mean, that's the facts. And I don't have the answer for that, but yeah, I don't know if I've even answered that question very well. I certainly would love to see something more beautiful. And I do think that it does happen in some bubbles where there are much, much more beautiful cultures happening. But I do think that we have to also be warriors right now. And that's the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And that balance is so important. And we know in the yogic system that when the male and female energies are out of balance, it causes dis-ease in the system. And, if you think about the imbalance on Earth, there's dis-ease in the system. So if there's one takeaway that you can leave with us on how psychedelics can help to bring about balance in this system, this planet, this Gaia, what would it be?
Well, before I do that, I want to just say that I appreciate your comment, and I think that it's a very popular notion of this idea of masculine and feminine energies. I don't actually. I'm looking at that again, because I really feel that that is dangerous. When you start to say, define one as masculine and one as feminine, then you run into trouble, because who says that's masculine? Who says that's feminine? I think it's important for us to begin to really, I'm getting an echo here again, um, to really kind of look at them as they could be either. I mean, for example, in some of the archetypal psychology of the ancient Greeks, Hermes is a male, but he's gender ambiguous. He's certainly gender fluid. Like he can literally, but that makes sense for his archetype because his archetype is about communicating and shifting and changing. He's Mercury in the Roman, so mercurial, think about that. But Hermes is way more interesting. He can go between worlds. So, but he's depicted as a male, and so we talk about him as a male. But I think I feel so much like I am part of that archetype is fully embodied in me. So, and I'm very female. I feel very female. So I know that these are models with which to communicate their languages, but they're not perfect. And I think that right now, especially talking about gender, we really need to look at that too. Like, maybe there aren't, how can we really know that's masculine versus feminine? How can we really know that if we've been taught that? So I want to say that. And then if there's one takeaway, tell me the takeaway part again. What was your takeaway question?
One takeaway to leave with people on how psychedelics can help to bring about balance.
Ah, well, it goes back to that we are animals and we are human animals and we have particular traits. And one of those traits is this brain. We have this amazing brain, but it also has these things in it that are really, I think, survival mechanisms of one kind or another. That, like, for instance, I love to bring up denial, but that's not the only one, but it's a big one. And we have denial in order to survive usually. Um, and we can also repress things. We can put things way back in our mind. I said sweep things under the rug. We can do that too. We do that a lot in little ways, big ways, massive ways, and we do that as culture. Also, we do that. So I think psychedelics have a particular power in helping us to identify those things because we don't, as a species, seem to have some kind of wonderful code that, like our app that kind of scans us and says, oh, you know what, you're over that now, you're out of danger, you don't need that denial anymore, or you can, let that one go. We don't have that. So I find, and I've found from many other people have shared this with me, that psychedelics can help us identify those things that we're hiding from ourselves very clearly, and again in loving ways, in ways that are, hey, it's okay that you did this, but it's no longer serving you, so you can let it go now. And if we do that, then we also have to look at the fact that we are destroying the planet and our own lives, and from a feminist perspective, look at the things that we can help in our own self, whether we're male, female, gender fluid, wherever you are. What can you do to be rid of some of that baggage and also to just be a better person, yourself? Just be happier, healthier, and stronger for the fight. I hate to keep bringing it back to that, but we really do need to fight. So I guess that's really what it is for me. As much as I care about feminism, it's all about the environment. I want to be a good species. I want to be part of, I love my species. I love myself. I don't hate myself. If I hated humans, I'd hate myself. We're wonderful. We have extraordinary gifts. We create art and music, and we can, we're looking at the stars. We're looking inside. We're amazing. We have such potential, and yet we are so screwed right now. We're screwed up, and we're not behaving properly. We need to heal individually, and we need to help each other heal. And you can't heal another person. You know that, right? You can't heal another person. You can only help them heal themselves. But you can do that, and you can help access to medicines. That's where the money comes in. But you cannot be stuck in your little privilege bubble and think that anybody and everybody can run off to an ayahuasca or an iboga or whatever ceremony somewhere in Costa Rica or Iowa or wherever. Not everybody can afford that. Some people are struggling to pay their rent or their social or their student loans. Money helps, but just these things. You keep on fighting for legality of these things, or decrim or whatever. I mean, I'm not an expert. I can't keep up with that, but I believe that they are human rights. They are our right as humans, and it's absurd that they're not, that we can't do whatever the hell we want. Clearly, they're our co-evolutionary allies. Clearly, that's the case. And if you look at the cultures who did work with them, including my own matrilineal line, they were the first major civilization in Europe, and they were extraordinary. We're still finding more. They just had, in 2015, they discovered another. tomb and they found more medicine work, okay? And they were, working with medicines all the time. It was part of their culture, and look what it did for them. I think that that can be true today, and I think it is true today. I think that part of the Renaissance is people are working with medicines, including microdosing. I know it's going on in high tech, and I'd love to be invited to one of those spaces and hear what some of those leaders are doing with microdosing and other psychedelics. I see it in the movies. I see it in science fiction. I'm a science fiction girl. But yeah, I mean, we all, wherever you are in your life, these can help you, and we ought to all have the right to work with them. Period. Don't know if that answered the question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we're at the end of our time here. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close it off?
Thanks to everybody, and I'm so sorry I couldn't sit here and talk and focus and not read all your wonderful, scrolling comments, because that was hard for me. I really wanted to hear you. It's I far prefer in person, but this is what we've got. It's to me, it's all about the back and forth, and in this format, there's not a lot of that. So I really look forward to when COVID-19 is whatever, gone, done. We have vaccinations, whatever it's going to be. I have no idea, but I look forward to being in community, in person, in real life with you, hopefully soon. Lots of love, and stay strong. That's it.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Zoe, and sharing your passion and your wisdom and your knowledge and your love with all of us. And there's a whole bunch of comments for you on the side that you can read, a bunch of love for you there. So we really appreciate you being here with us today. So I'd like to take this time to thank those that have helped with the webinar series. I would like to thank our guest speakers, Zoe Helene and Cosmic Sister, and thank you to our amazing sponsors. Also, thank you to the MAPS Canada volunteers who are assisting with this event. And also thank you to all of our speakers, past, present, and future. We appreciate you and the amazing work that you are doing. Thank you to Mark Hayden for being such an amazing leader of our Canadian organization. And very importantly, thank you to all of you for tuning in, for being here today on this webinar series to support the series, these speakers, and this important research. Our next episode will be on July 21st with visionary artist Chris Dyer. Make sure and submit your questions in advance. And for the full lineup, you can view it on the webpage at mapscanada.org/webinar. So we have 6 episodes remaining. If you haven't purchased the series and would like to, you're still able to right up until the end of August. All of the videos will be recorded, so you can just tune in and watch them all if you would like. So thank you again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye for now.